Good.
So, listen.
Okay, we're going to go back to the beginning of the slide. Ready? He's checking to see if it's live streaming. Mom, are you watching? If you're watching, call me.
Folks, if you're watching online, we're just working out a couple quick technical difficulties. We'll be right with you. Thanks for joining us for Sukkot 2019, 2021, whatever year it is. That's because Deb never went through Facebook. She doesn't know.
I think this is going to be about a 5-minute. I think we know what's going on. Feelings. Nothing more than feelings. Yes. I moved kind of to Kyrgyzstan. It's over by the other stands. And by the way, don't let a country that ends in stan, don't let it scare you. Stan is just the word for land. So Kyrgyz land, Kazakh land, Afghanis land. So, but because a lot of times you hear Stan, you go, oh, terrorist explosions. Kyrgyzstan isn't like that one. It's the good one. And yeah, I went there 6-7 years ago, just because my goal was to visit every country on the planet, and I had to go there eventually. And the airline, some reason they canceled my flight out, and they put me in a hotel for 3 days till the next flight, all expenses paid. That was nice. And while I was there for those 3 days in February, where it's bitter cold outside, and I was jet lagged, having come from America, I was wide awake at 3 in the morning. I'd go down in the lobby. There's nothing to do. You can't go for a walk. It's freezing cold. And there was a hotel clerk who, he was working the night shift because he was going to law school. And we became friends and just talking every night for an hour. I tried to introduce Hebrew stuff, and it was just bouncing right off. He didn't care. But we did. He was kind of atheist, raised Muslim, but not practicing. But there's probably not a God. And when I got back to America, we had exchanged email addresses, which I do with everybody. And I asked him for his mailing address, and I mailed him a Bible in Russian, because that's the language they speak, and in English, and a whole bunch of candy. As maybe you all know, I hand out payday candy bars around the world, because they don't sell them anywhere except America. And when people see them, they're unique, they taste unique, and they remember you. And so when you go back 6 months later or a year later, you give them a payday and they'll go, I remember you. Yeah, these were really good. And then you're closer to them quicker. And so this guy at the hotel, he and I became friends and started talking about God over the internet. And maybe a year or so later, I needed to go to Tajikistan, another stan that's not safe to go to, but it's close to Kyrgyzstan. So I wrote to him and said, listen, I got to go to Tajikistan. I can buy you a ticket for $50 to come over, and you will be my tour guide, my translator. I won't get ripped off. I won't get killed. And come for 3 days, and we're going to settle the God thing. Is there a God or isn't there a God? Because right now you're kind of working at the hotel and you're studying for this. Let's just take 3 days to see Tajikistan. And I don't even need to see much. I just need to say my foot was in Tajikistan so I can scratch it off my stupid list. So he flew over, and we spent 3 days. And when we left, he knew that there was a God. And yeah. And now his wife is... she's the editor of all my videos, and we film most of the videos in Kyrgyzstan. Half are filmed at my house, and half are filmed over there, but all of them are edited there. And so I spent, I think, 6 months last year, and I've already spent 5 months this year in Kyrgyzstan, and I'll be going back October 13. Are we ready? We're not ready. We're getting close. What? Max and his wife and their immediate families speak enough English that, yeah. Yet. Russian. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't teach over there, although family, it's funny, they come from a communist mentality, because they used to be Soviet Union, right? One of the SSRs. And Russian, Soviet, so their communist mentality, their atheist mentality, and that's just their mentality. And it's, we're supposed to be Jesus-like. I try, but we fall short. And I'm probably really fallen short. But it's amazing, just little things that you would do. And they look at you like, why did you do that? Well, why did you say hello to him? I said, because we were passing on the sidewalk, and it would just be odd to not acknowledge his, say, hey, good morning. But we don't do that. Well, you should start, And, I mean, that's a little thing. And imagine if you do big things, we finish dinner, and I get up and start clearing the table, and for the mother, and the mother's, the man, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's not your job. It's rather chauvinist play, but it is what it is, But just to do a kind gesture to a stranger surprises them. We're ready. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Okay, so today we're doing the letter Resh. Okay, it's the 20th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Its partner is the Shin. Let's go to the next one. Next. Notice here's the Resh in 3 different fonts. Resh is the 20th letter. It's the R sound. Its ancient picture is a head facing this way. Its gematria value is 200. Remember, gematria is just every Hebrew letter has a number associated with it. Okay, this is one of the big ones, 200. If you have an ancient Resh, and the language of Hebrew reads this way, but if you turn the language around, next, and then straighten up some of the lines, Resh. And our lowercase Resh, or our lowercase r, is the modern, This is, we can't move my computer closer to, wait, it just worked here. Okay, there are 18,109 reshes in the Torah. There is a cursive version, which you'll see the Jews use the cursive a lot. You'll see it on their road signs and stores. And you can see it looks like a resh.
All right, I'm going to do it.
Okay. And these are just all the different groups of where you form that letter in your mouth. Okay, the gutturals, the aleph and the chet, they're formed down in the throat. The palatals are in the back of the mouth, on the roof of the mouth. The gimel, yod, you can see where your mouth forms in doing that. The linguals are done with your tongue. The dalit, tet, lamed, noon, your tongue hits top of your mouth. The dentals are... the resh is one of the dentals. The tzayin, the samek, shin, resh, and sadi. And then the labials are formed with your lips. The bet, mem, vav, pei. There is a Greek equivalent. It's the letter rho. Okay. If anyone was in a sorority or fraternity, you might have known that. I did. I was in a sorority. No, I was in a fraternity. I was in a sorority. I got arrested. No. Mine was a culinary fraternity. Yeah, it was ate a bite of pie. Okay. The word resh is spelled resh, yod, shin. And it's very close to the word rosh, which is the word for head. And I told you resh represents a head, right? And rosh, head, is resh, aleph, shin. The first place we see this word rosh, head, is in the first word of the Bible, Bereshit. Bereshit, in beginning. And you can see the three letters, resh, aleph, shin, spells head. And when you do that, you also have the remaining letters, bet, yod, tav, spell house, bet. So in the first word, you have head of the house, which is pointing again to Yeshua. The first word of the Bible is Bereshit, but it's actually that B in the front, Bereshit, the ba is the preposition in. And then Reshit is the first full word, which means beginning. So when you say Bereshit, it's ba in Reshit, beginning. Okay? Oh, there it is. That's good here. The first appearance of this word as a word, because there it was kind of hidden in the word Bereshit, but the first time we see the word head in the Bible is in Genesis 3:15. This is where, Adam and Eve sinned, and God's doling out the curses. Snake, you have to crawl on your belly and eat dust. And he says he's going to put enmity between you, snake, and the woman. Enmity is like hostility, fighting, okay? And between your seed and her seed, he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. So the snake is going to somehow bruise the Messiah, this Savior person, on the heel. But the Messiah person is going to, the seed of the woman is going to bruise the serpent on his head. Okay? And we see that has partially come true in that Satan, when Jesus is crucified, they bruise his heel, they pound nails through them, right, and nail him to a cross. And it's kind of funny how Jesus is going to crush Satan's head, which conceivably happened the moment he died. Satan's crushed right there, right? He just lost. But the Messiah is going to crush his head. But the serpent, his attack method is like a dirty, sneaky, rotten, no good snake. You know, come up from behind and bite at your heel. That's kind of his MO. Okay, next. Another place you see this Rosh is in a holiday from 7 days ago, Rosh Hashanah. Okay, Rosh Hashanah. There's Rosh. And remember what the hay, what is hay in a beginning a word? It is behold, but what do they use it as? It's the word the. Like ha-shemayim is the heavens. And ha-aretz is the earth. The hay in the front is the. So we have Rosh, head, ha-shana, the year, shana. Okay? Rosh Hashanah, by the way, that is a modern name of that holiday. The Leviticus 23 refers to it as Yom Teruah. Teruah is trumpet blasts. Yom Teruah is the day of trumpet blasts. That's how the Bible refers to it. This Rosh Hashanah, that's a very new name. In the last 100 years, they've been calling it Rosh Hashanah. Okay? And if you've seen any of my videos, I've told you before that some letters in the Torah are extra small, and some letters in the Torah are extra big, minuscule and majuscule. And here are a handful of them. You can see in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit, the bet is a little bit bigger, just like when you're reading a story, once upon a time, right? The O is big. And here you can see some of them are very small. There's a little mem. Here's a little aleph. Here's a big resh. Oh, a resh. Let's go to the next one. There's an enlarged resh here. In Exodus 34:14, let's look at it. Oh, by the way, resh is not dalit. Do they look kind of alike? You could mix them up. I made them both brownish, so it really does confuse you. But you can see this one is a right angle, and it overhangs. This one is a smooth for the resh. Don't get them confused. In fact, next, look at this verse. This is the one that has the enlarged resh. It says, for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So he's telling you, don't worship any other God, for the Lord is a jealous God. Okay, next. Here it is. For you shall worship no other. The word for other in Hebrew is this, echar. Echar. It's an aleph, a chet, and a resh. And for some reason, he has a very big resh in this word. What, are you looking ahead? Next. Because if he didn't, this word echar is very close to the word echad. Echad is the Hebrew word for one. So if you got them confused, because they look kind of alike, right? If you get them confused, next. It could say, for you shall worship no one God, if you saw it as echad. Yeah. So he made the resh extra big so we wouldn't mix that up. Next. Here's some other I think there's 17 letters in the Torah that are either extra big or extra small. I showed you the ones earlier. Here are the rest of them. And go ahead, look at the next one. Notice here there's an enlarged dalit. Next. And it's in Deuteronomy 6:4. And look, in Deuteronomy 6:4, there's also an enlarged ayin. Does Deuteronomy 6:4 ring a bell with anyone? We have a bell here? I don't. I thought there was a bell someplace here. Okay, well, it's too late. The joke's over. But, yeah, if the joke comes up again, we'll be ready. I'm not going to fool with it. Okay. So let's look at the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4. Next. Look, there's 2 enlarged letters in the Shema. Shema, by the way, Shema means to hear. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Okay? And here it is in the Hebrew. And notice he has an enlarged ayin and an enlarged dalit. And that is a dalit, right? It comes to the right angle. Next. These are going to go fast here. Here's the first word, Shema. If I asked you, how would you spell Shema? If you have any basic Hebrew, you would probably say it begins with shin. Next. The next letter would be a mem, Shema, ah. And you would most likely maybe guess aleph. Next. And there would be Shema. But that is a Hebrew word, but it's not the word Shema here. This is the word, next, maybe, or perhaps. Next. So the word becomes, maybe the Lord your God, the Lord is one. So he don't want you making that mistake and confusing the ayin because they sound alike. Shema, Shema, right? So to make sure you don't confuse, he makes it a big ayin at the end of Shema. So you'll know. Next. Hear, O Israel. Next. Next. And for the dalit, next. It's an aleph. Next. Chet. And, you know, if you weren't careful, you might confuse the dalit and the resh. And if you accidentally put the resh, you would have the word echar. Echar means another. So, perhaps, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is another. You got 2 whammies in this one, right? So he don't want you making that mistake. The first whammy is an audible mistake you might make, mixing up the ayin and the aleph. The last one is a visual you might mess up between the dalit and the resh. So to make sure you don't, he enlarges both of those letters. Okay? Nice? Okay. Quick, they like that. Take up the offering now. Not yet. Okay. Next. Next. Yeah, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Next. The word dalit, or the letter dalit, begins the word dal, which means poor, okay? That's one of the words that mean poor. We know Samson's friend was Delilah. Lila is the Hebrew word for night, right? You've heard Lila Tov, okay? And Lila, it's poor and nighttime. Poor and weak is Dal and nighttime. And Samson is Shimshon. He's strong. And Shimshon comes from Shemesh, sunshine. So you have strong sunshine and weak nighttime. And what happens when the sun goes to the night? You can't see. And what happened when Samson went to Delilah? He got his eyes poked out and he can't see. It's the names help tell the story. Next. And Jesus said the poor will always be with us. Okay, so we should know the word dal, poor. Next. And the poor man, the Dalit, looks like a poor man. If you've seen the letters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalit, look, the Dalit, he's bent over. He's got a hand sticking out the back, right? That's that arm sticking out. Because the previous letter was the Gimel. The Gimel represents the Holy Spirit. He's delivering the gifts of the Spirit. And then you come to the Dalit, and the next letter is the Hey. The Hey is Hashem, God. And notice the poor man is bowing down before Hashem. He's not looking back to see who's giving his money. He has his hand back, accepting it though. Okay? Next. And if the Dalit represents poor, the Resh is going to represent destitute, really poor. Okay? Does that look like a really poor man? It took me about half a day to do that. Okay, next. Here's some examples of showing that the Resh, the letter Resh is part of a word, Rosh, Rush, that represents poor. So Saul's servants spoke these words to David, but David said, "Is it a trivial in your sight to become the king's son-in-law, since I am only a poor man?" There's that word poor, it's Rosh. So Resh can mean, Rosh can be head. The letter Resh can represent head, but also that same word, Rush, which sounds very similar, means poor. Next. There's another example. Remember when David takes Bathsheba and he has Bathsheba's wife killed, or Bathsheba's husband's Uriah killed in the battle. And then Nathan, the priest, comes and tells David this story. You listen here. There were two men in the city, one wealthy, one poor. The wealthy man had a great number of flocks. The poor man had nothing at all except one little ewe lamb, which he brought and nurtured, and it grew up with him and his children. He would eat the scraps and drink from his cup, lie in his lap. It was like a daughter to him. Remember this? And then the rich man took the poor man's lamb, and David said, "Oh, that man should be punished." And then Nathan said, "David, you are that rich man, and you took this Uriah's wife." So, but here's that word. Look, it's spelled the same as Rosh, head. Okay, but it means poor in this example. Next. Now, not only can it mean poor, but it can also mean inheritance, which represents rich. How confusing is this? "See, the Lord your God has placed the land before you. Go up, take possession, just as the Lord your God of your fathers has spoken. Do not fear, be dismayed." So here the Rosh means to inherit or possess, possession. So it can mean poor, it can mean money coming in. Next. Remember, whenever Isaac is giving the blessing, and Jacob comes in and pretends to be his brother, and he gets the blessing. And then later Esau comes in to get the blessing, and Isaac says, "Behold, I have made him your master, and I have given to him all his relatives as servants. And with grain and new wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? He said, I have already given everything in the blessing to Jacob. I got nothing left to give to you, Esau. Well, the three things that he gave him servants, he gave him grain, and he gave him new wine. Servants, by the way, remember in Hebrew, how do you pluralize a word? You end with yod mem. So that's a servant. Those are servants. And that word servant, anyone know this word? Or can you sound it out? Huh? He's getting close. It's Obed. And if you're a servant of God, you are Obadiah. Right? You've heard of Obadiah, right? Obed is, and in Arabic, it's Abdullah. It's Obed Allah. Right? You're a servant of Allah, Abdullah. Grain is Dagan. That could be corn or wheat or any kind of grain. And new wine is Tarosh. And the reason I even brought this verse up is because Tarosh has the Resh Shin in it. Next. The new wine is Tarosh. Remember, Rosh represents inheritance, right? Possession, inheritance. Next. So what he's given to Jacob is he's given him servants. He's blessed him with corn, with grain that's going to multiply. So his riches multiply. And to Rosh, his new wine, he's blessing him with, because that word Rosh is in there, inheritance. All right. Words beginning with Resh. The earliest one here maybe is Genesis 1:2. The earth was without form and void, darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, hovering over the face of the waters. Ruach begins with Resh. Next. And Exodus 10:19, and the Lord turned a very strong west wind, which blew the locusts away. This is whenever the plagues were being sent on Egypt. But notice that's that same word, ruach, is wind, and ruach is the word for spirit. I can see that's a good tie-in, isn't it? Because the wind, the spirit is like the wind, right? You don't know where it's coming from, where it's going, right? But you know it's there. Okay, next. Another word that begins with resh is regel. Isaiah 52:7, this is one of my favorite verses. And it says, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who bring gospel, good news, who proclaims peace, who brings glad tidings of good things, who proclaims salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. So regel, and it's kind of interesting that regel has foot in it, and it has a gimel, and the gimel's picture is like a foot walking. So he has something in there, and this is the shepherd's staff. So here's somebody walking. He's got a gimel and a lamed. Lamed is the shepherd's staff. Okay, it's the head guy. It's the head guy walking with a shepherd's staff. Foot. Okay, next. Names beginning with resh. This is a little quiz too here. You get to guess what they are to see how good your Hebrew is for anyone. This is. Are you looking ahead? Can you see the next one? Okay, that's good. I don't think he has the next slide yet. This is Rebecca's name in Hebrew, although they don't pronounce it Rebecca, they pronounce it Rivka. I think he is cheating. Next. Rivka is how the Jews pronounce her name. It's Rebecca. Okay. Is that John and Joey? Who's Jacob?
There's 3 of them.
Oh, I didn't know the third one. Oh, okay. Well, let me say hello. These were guys from like years ago who, when I came here, how you doing? I don't think I know this one. Do I? Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Okay. You know, the first time I came here, his brother Joey, where is he here? The middle one. After I finished speaking, or maybe it was the next night he came, he walked up to me and said, "Here, I want you to have this for your ministry." And he gave me $1. And then I took it home and I put it on the counter, and I thought, well, he wants me to do something with it. And it sat on the counter for 6 weeks or 6 months. And I thought, this is not what he wanted me to do. He wants me to spend it. So I went and bought a Snickers. No, I don't know where it went, but it went for something good, I'm sure. But I remember that story so vivid. But that was that little Joey kid. He played the drums. Uh-huh. Okay. Rebecca, next. Rebecca, remember, married Isaac, had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob had his name changed. God said to him, "Your name is Yaakov, Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel should be your name." So he called his name Israel. Next. Yep, Yaakov becomes next. Israel. Next. And Israel has a resh in it, so it doesn't begin with resh, but it had it in there, so I wanted to show you. By the way, Jacob, he gets a new name, Israel. You know where that name Israel comes from? His father is Isaac. His mother is Sarah. No, his grandmother is Sarah. His mother is Rebecca. His grandfather is Abram. And who's she? His wife. His wife is Leah. So he took the letters of the matriarchs and patriarchs and forms next. Israel. Very nice. Okay, next. Yeah, it's all the first letters in the Hebrew. Next. Okay, here's a new one. Who's this? Rachel. It's a resh, a chet, and a lamed. So they would actually pronounce it Rachel. Okay. Next. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. So there's her name. Next. Reuben. Resh Aleph Vav, and then Ben Nun at the end, Reuben. Next. And Leah conceived and gave birth to a son, and she named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has seen my affliction, surely my husband will love me now." Reuben, Ben means son. Ru means behold. So, behold a son. But she didn't speak it in English. She said, Reuben. She spoke Hebrew. Next. Well, Mr. Smarty Pants. That's a pay. Sometimes P's can sound like Rapha. Right? The letter P like in phone, sometimes is PH. So this is Rapha. Rapha means healer in Hebrew. So if you are sick and you are going to pray for health, address your prayer Yahweh Rapha. Because he will go, what did you say? Because if we don't normally call him Yahweh Rapha and all of a sudden that comes out of your mouth, he's going to turn his head no matter what you say, if you say Yahweh. But he will like that you call him Yahweh Rapha if you're going for healing. If you're going into battle, it's Yahweh Nisi, the Lord our banner, right? If you need provision, it's Yahweh Yireh, the Lord our provider. He's got different names and different titles for the occasion. Next. For I am the Lord who heals you. It doesn't tell. Oh, yeah, Exodus 15:26. Go. Rahab. He's good. Next. Rahab, remember she had the apartment on the wall? They went and entered her house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Okay. Good, Rahab. Next. There's Ruth. Okay. Next. And the name of the other was Ruth. Okay. Next. Ooh. Okay. Let's go. We got it. Let's go to the next one. Just next slide. Okay, we have an R. Next. Okay, we have an A. We have an R. We have an RA. We have an RAG. Next, we have RAGG. Hit it. RAGGMOPP, rag mop. You don't know rag mop? You never heard of rag mop? Play it. Stop playing. Okay, next.
It's a song.
I just did.
Throwing in trick questions in here.
That's right. RAGG Memvav Pay Pay. And why do I have an E there? Because Rag Mop's big hit was the Ames Brothers. And it was in 1950. Next. There it is. Rag Mop from the Ames Brothers, 1950. All right, next. Just see if you're awake. Okay, here's another word with a resh in it. It's the word or. It means light. We see it, verse 3 in the Bible, right? Vayomer Elohim, yehi or, vayi or. And God said, be light, and light be. Light was. Next. And a very similar word, that word for light is or. And here we have a verse, and the Lord made garments of skin for Adam and his wife, and he clothed them. That word for skin is or. Oh, that's the same word. Kinda. They're spelled differently, but they're pronounced the same. Next. Oh. Louder. R-A-G-G. Rag. R-A-G-G-M-O-P-P, rag mop. Rag mop. Okay. So in the word for light begins with an aleph. The word for skin begins with an ayin. So you can see they're very similar. Next. Remember the aleph and the ayin. He didn't want you getting those confused in the Shema, so he made a really big ayin, right? Because it's very easy to confuse these two. See, very close, right? Next. We know God is light. In him there's no darkness at all. By the way, this is a candle. We took a picture of this candle. And you don't realize it, but it's a lit candle. And the flame for some reason isn't showing up. And neither is the shadow. The flame does not make a shadow. You realize that? The wick, you can see the wick shadow, but the flame doesn't, because the flame is light. And God is light, and there's no darkness in him at all. There is not even a shadow. If God walked past here, he would not have a shadow. That's what I'm thinking. All right. That's my hand, I think. Next. Next. Okay, so here are those two words. There's or, light, and there's skin, light. This one begins with an aleph, which has a value of 1. This one begins with ayin, which has a value of 70. Next. So when they were clothed in light, it adds up to 207. And then he makes garments of skin, or, and that adds up to 276. Whenever Adam and Eve were first created, they're naked. And they're running around clothed in or, light. Then, once they fall, now God makes garments of or for them. So they were clothed in or, and now they're clothed in or. But they're different ors. You understand? Next. The difference between this or and this or is 69. They were at 207, and then they dropped down to 276, right? So they decreased by 69. Next. 69 in Hebrew is a samek. Samek's value is 60, and tet is a coiled snake, is 9. So how do you write 69 in Hebrew? Samek, tet. Make sense? So what happened was Chava, who's Chava? Eve. Next. Chava supported the serpent. He said, yeah, go ahead and eat from this tree. And she agreed. And when she supported the serpent, 69, it went down from being clothed in light down to clothed in skin. Next. My Jewish friend Reuben, who died, I've told you Reuben's stories before, from Israel. He died about 3 months ago. Sorry. But whenever I was showing him this, his interpretation was, this is crazy, I think, when it said, when he clothed them in skin after the sinning, prior to that, they were clothed in light. When he clothed them in skin, he gave them this. He's not talking about that God sacrificed an animal and gave them clothing, he actually gave them skin. And prior to that, they were just spirit beings. Yes, they were spirit beings. And then when they sinned, he gave them this skin. And I told Reuben, that's ridiculous. But it's interesting that his thinking was way different than my thinking. Okay? Next. Give me the next one also. Here's two other words that are very similar. Here's our next one too also. The next two maybe even. Yeah, it's good. Here's Resh, Shin, Ayin, Resh, Aleph, or Resh, Aleph, Shin. They're the same word except the Ayin and the Aleph. Yeah. And the difference between those are also 69. Okay, between being the head. But I don't even know what, let's go to the next slide. I don't even like this slide. Get away. Next. Okay. Exodus 3:14. This is a good one. God said to Moses, because they're going to ask, what is your name? And he says, I am that I am. He said, this is what you shall say to the sons of Israel. I am sent me to you. God also told Moses, tell the Israelis, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I am to be remembered from generation to generation. Here's this phrase, Lador Dor. From Dor is generation to generation. So you got a repeated word here. Okay. By the way, this is the verse that we talk about the two witnesses that are going to come to Jerusalem, and there's discrepancy of who are the two witnesses going to be. Everyone knows one of them is Elijah, and the other one, some people say it's Enoch because it's appointed for everyone wants to die, and he hasn't died. And okay, but some people didn't die. Other people didn't die. Elijah didn't die. Some people died more than once. It said appointed once to die. Lazarus died twice. Okay? So I don't think it's Enoch. I believe and know it's Moses, because here, when Moses says, they're going to ask me, what is your name? And God says, I am that I am. When Moses goes down off the mountain, nowhere in the rest of the Torah do they ever ask him, what is his name? But he said, they're going to ask me, what is your name? So if Moses says, this is the first thing out of Moses' mouth, or maybe the second thing, they're going to ask me, what is your name? You know what? They're going to ask. And if they didn't ask during Torah times, that means they're probably going to ask when he comes back as one of the two witnesses. And they're going to ask, what was his name? Okay, next. I'm throwing that one in for free. Huh? Okay, let's look at the order of God. It's interesting that the word order, here's a dalit and a resh, right? Order. It's in there. Next. The word for generation is dor. Okay. Dalit, resh. Next. And generations are things that continue, right? They're advancing upward and onward, right? And that's a nice picture of dor, generations. And Hebrew is such a language, if you take words that spell one way and you switch them, which I've done here, because that's the word dor is generation. If I switch it, now I get the word raid. The resh comes first and the dalit comes second. And the word raid means, next, to decline or go down. which is kind of the opposite concept of generations, which are going up and forward. You understand? One goes up, one goes down. And it's just the opposite. There are other words like that as well, that when you write them backwards, it means the opposite. That's kind of clever in language. Let me give you some examples of these next. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Here's that word. It starts out, Vayarad, Moshe, and went down Moses. Yarad, to go down. He went down off the mountain to tell them. Okay? Next. Here's in Jonah. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship that was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it. And those went downs are Yerad. It's the RD sound. Next. The Lord hurled a great wind on the sea. The sailors became afraid. Everyone cried to his God. They hurled the cargo which was in the ship. Jonah had gone down to the hold of the ship, lain down and fallen asleep. Asleep is Radam. You see the RD. The Resh comes first, then the Dalit. Okay, to go down into sleep. Next. But Jonah had gone down and he was fast asleep. Vayeradam. Vayeradam. Next. You can see the va is and. Remember, anytime you have a vav in the front of a word, it's and. Next. The yod is he, and then you have radam, asleep. But it's declining, going down, RD. Next. Then you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho. This is when they're entering the promised land, right? Look at the word Jordan. The Jordan has an R and a D in it in that order. The Jordan flows down, okay? Anything that's declining is going to have the RD sound. Next. So, if you read it one way, it's generations. If you read the other way, it's declining. And these two letters, R and D, they're going to represent two words that we're going to show you in a second. And those two words encapsulate a lot about God and about these two words. You go to the next one. The first one I want you to know is the word din. Begins with a dalit. Din stands for judgment. The Hebrew word for judge is Dan, right? That's one of the 12 tribes, right? Dan. His name means judge. Jacob had 12 sons, and he had one daughter. Her name was Dinah, or Dinah, and that's a female judge. That's Dan. It comes from judgment. Okay, so din has to do with judgment. Next. Here's a verse, Job 36. But you are filled with the judgment due the wicked. Judgment and justice take hold of you. You can see the word twice in this verse. Here's din. There's din, right? Judgment, judgment, din. Begins with dalit. Next. Next. Now, resh begins the word racham. Racham means mercy, which is the opposite of judgment, right? Next. Moses says, please show me your glory. God said, I will show all my goodness to pass before you. I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. The word for compassion is racham. It's in there twice in that verse. Next. So we got these two principles, judgment and mercy. Those two things are the two big attributes of God. Next. Here, remember when Moses goes up on that mountain, and it says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from within the bush. Moses saw the bush ablaze with fire, but it was not consumed. Next. By the way, this burning bush, go ahead. The word for burning bush, or the word for bush is Sinai in Hebrew. Okay? And it's actually the word thorn bush. It's not just any kind of bush. It's not a rhododendron. It's a thorn bush. Okay? Sinai. Next. If you write that word backwards, Sinai, this is just a little extra thing here. Sinai backwards, next, is Hanesh, which is the miracle. That's kind of interesting that the word Sinai backwards is the miracle, because the Sinai, that bush, the Sinai was on fire and it didn't burn up. It's a miracle. Next. But we're going back here to that verse, appeared to him in a blazing fire from within the bush. That's judgment, fire. The bush is on fire, judgment. Next. But it was not consumed. There's the mercy. So that picture of a burning bush, that's a huge picture of God, right? He can burn you up, but he doesn't want to. He wants to live within you and not burn you up. Next. Okay, next. What is this? Notice that the word din and dur, the dalit is a da. It's a how do you want to say it? It's a definite harsh D, dum, right? Dalit, like judgment, da. Okay? Next. Raham, the resh, this is a little side note here on the resh, because this is really cool when I saw this. Look at this. Can a woman forget her nursing child and have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these may forget, but I will not forget you. God is telling the people, a woman can't forget her baby in her womb, and I will not forget you. Okay? And that word for compassion, we said, is raham. Next. And look here. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. That word womb, next, is rechem. Notice it's spelled the same. In God's brain, in God's way of thinking, compassion and mercy is the same letters as womb. I mean, if you're going to show compassion or mercy to someplace, that is the ultimate safe place, right? Supposedly, unless Planned Parenthood gets involved or, But how clever that mercy and womb are tied together. They're pronounced a little different, Raham, Rechem, but they're the same letters. Okay, next. And notice Raham, it begins with a resh. And listen to the letter resh. Resh. It even rolls a bit. You have dalit versus resh. It's a softer letter. Do you see the difference? Okay. And I know some of you have children. I was a school teacher, so I had children. And but I know at the beginning of the year, if you start the year out with dalit, here's the rules, we're going to follow these rules, and this is this. And then as time goes on, you go to the resh. You show a little mercy and some compassion. Things go much better than if you start with resh and try to get Dalit, right? That's almost impossible. And look what happens. If you're following God's rules and you do the Dalit and then teach your kids about Resh, there's a good chance that Dalit, Resh, Dur generations will occur. If you do it the other way and you start out with Resh and then try to rein it in with the Dalit and the judgment, you may have lost him. And there's a decline, a raid. You see? Very clever how even the letters and what they mean, and God just thought of everything. Next. There he is. So next. There's a couple nexts here. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, if you do the hard, then the soft, you get generations. Next. If you start with soft and try to rein it in with hard, you got decline. Next. Next. Okay. Bashin Kuf Resh. This is a saying that they use in English and Hebrew. And we'll just go to the next one and I'll show you what it means. It means with sheker. Anyone know what sheker is? Falsehood. Are you sure? It doesn't have the answer here, so I don't know where he's getting this. I think, yeah. Or he's been paying attention to my lessons because I've taught this 100 times, and you sit in the front row, why didn't you answer? Jeez. Okay, and the Jews use this saying like we do, like, oh, that is a big fat L-I-E lie, right? And that's what you're lying. That is a big Bashin Kuf Resh. They're spelling out the word lie. Okay, next. It's sheker, but they're not saying the word sheker. They're spelling the word sheker. And it's an idiom. They do it a lot. Next. The Hebrew alphabet has 4 beginning letters. Oh, really? That's a surprise. Next. The first letter in the alphabet is the Aleph. And everybody knows this one, right? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. But if you look at it a different way, next, the Resh could be the first. Because Resh represents the head, the first, right? And it's actually the first word in the Bible. Reshit begins with a Resh. So the Resh could conceivably be the first, because the word Resh means first, head. Next. The Yod might be the first. Well, how is the Yod first? Well, the Yod might be first because when you have a pen and you want to write the scripture, as soon as that pen touches the paper, you've now made a dot. And that dot is the Yod. So you can't write any Hebrew letter without first touching the pen to the paper and making a Yod. So Yod is the first letter of the Hebrew. If you're writing it. Make sense? Next is the phonetic beginning is hey. Because hey, if you remember, represents breath. And if you're going to speak any letter, the first thing you're going to do, air's coming out. That's the letter hey. Right? So you can't speak a letter of the Hebrew without the air coming out first. That's the hay. And those 4 beginning letters spell aria, lion. I don't know what to do with that, but they do happen to spell lion. Maybe the Lion of Judah, perhaps. Don't we have one here? There's one. Where's the Lion of Judah when you need one? Here's one. Huh? I don't know. Okay, next. Okay, Psalm 119. All the Psalm 119. The first 8 letters all begin with Aleph. The first 8 verses. Here they are in English. Next. Here they are in the Hebrew. And notice next. All of them, all 8 verses begin with 8 or Aleph. If you jump to the next 8 verses, they all begin with Bet. The next 8 all begin with Gimel. And if you jump down near the end, next to the Resh, 153 to 160, all begin with Resh. Next. Okay. And that is the end. But we do have a bonus. If we have time for a bonus. Does anybody need to pee? Anybody need to go? We're all good. And then in our series of videos, we try to find a picture of my life that represents each of the Hebrew letters. And the Resh we took on Easter Island back in '97. Easter Island has those giant heads. Right, that's a Resh, okay? And then I needed a root canal when I was in Tibet, and it was $35. So there I am. Okay, next. The bonus. Next. We actually are going to do one night, and it's probably going to be tomorrow night, Pardes. And explain what Pardes is. And I have 4 examples to show Pardes. And one of the examples for tomorrow night happens to be tonight's bonus. So we're going to do this bonus. And tomorrow night, when I get to the 4th bonus, if you can leave because you've already heard it, or you can listen to it again. Or you can listen to it for the first time if you're not listening now. Okay. Pardes, and this should take 20 minutes, okay, and then we're out of here. Pardes, it's a Pei, Resh, Dalit, Samek. It's the Hebrew word for orchard. I find that when I was in Israel and I was renting a car, they have at the airport, they have the parking garage. And if you go to Disney World, they have different lots. Here I'm in Mickey, I'm in Goofy, right? They name the different lots after different characters. Or in the Tel Aviv airport, the 4 sections where you could be parked are either Pei, Resh, Dalit, or Samek. So they consider the parking lot an orchard, all right, a Pardes. Next. Here's the word pari. It's a Pei, Resh, Yod. Pari, this is a word you see a lot in the Bible, so put it in your head. It means, next, fruit. In fact, remember, the P can be an F sound, right? P, F. So if you make the P and F sound, that's FR. So it's already starting out like fruit, right? That's where we get the word fruit. And a yod is an I. There's an I in it. All right? Next. We get the word paradise. Comes from Pardes. Look, it's a Pardes. Paradise. Pardes. And what paradise can you think of where they had fruit? Next. It's the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. It's a paradise. They had fruit. They had Pardes, orchard. Okay, so these are all interconnected. And the Jews take this word, Pardes, And they say that every verse can be studied on levels. And each level is a little bit deeper than the previous. Okay? And they name the levels after these four letters, P-R-D-S, Pardes. And we're going to do an example. By the way, the word Pardes does show up in the Bible. Here in Nehemiah, it's translated as the king's Pardes, the king's forest. But it translates it there. Ecclesiastes, I made myself gardens and parks. Here's gardens, and here it translated Pardes as parks. Song of Solomon, your branches are an orchard of pomegranates, as there's orchard, it's straight out orchard, Pardes. Next. Okay, now each of the four letters, the Pei, Resh, Dalit, and Samek, each have a meaning. The Pei represents the Peshat level. Peshat in Hebrew means the simple, the literal meaning. Okay? So when you read a verse that says, Jesus wept, what can you come away knowing? Jesus wept. Right? It's the literal, that's what it says, that's what you get. And when you're translating or interpreting, that's the word, when you're interpreting other levels, your interpretations can never contradict the Peshat level. Just keep that in mind when you're out doing it on your own, okay? Next. The remez, the Hebrew word remez is hint. So there's a hint of something going on from that verse that you can learn. Next is the drosh level. You've heard of a midrash. Midrash are notes that rabbis take and write down and pass on to generations. That's an application. And then finally, you have the sod level. Sod is the Hebrew word for secret or mystery. And so that's going to be the deeper level. Next. Huh? Back up. Ready? Okay, next. So we're going to take a verse and we're going to dissect it into four levels just to give you an example. And tomorrow night we're going to do it 4 times. Okay? Next. Tonight's verse. Aha. Genesis 42, 1 and 2. Now Jacob saw there was grain in Egypt, and Jacob said to his sons, why are you staring at one another? Next. Then he said, look, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place, so that we may live and not die. So if I take those 2 verses and look at it at the Peshat level, I know, okay, they're all around Jacob and they're all looking at each other. Okay, what are we going to do? We got a solution. We need food, and where are we going to get it? And the old man Jacob says, well, why are you looking at one another? The solution's down in Egypt. They got food down there. Go get it. That's what I gather from the Peshat level. Yes, everyone? Okay. Next, please. Notice he does say, go down there and buy some for us. And what's the word for go down? Redu. And what do you notice about redu that you may have just learned in the last 20 minutes? It's a resh dalit in there, right? Which is to decline. Go down there to Egypt. And okay, so isn't that clever? I picked an example that tested you on the, thank you. Next. Now the remez. There's going to be a hint in these verses we need to look at. Okay, next. It says, so Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Okay. This is later when they go down there to buy grain. Next. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about, as it is this day, to save many people alive. Notice it says that Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. Why didn't they? Well, one, it's been 20 years. They're not expecting him to be number two. He's dressed in some crazy Egyptian getup, right? He's not dressed like, when they left him. So they don't recognize him. But it's kind of interesting that the verse we started with is Jacob saying to them, why are you looking at one another? You know why they didn't recognize him? Because they were looking at one another. They needed a solution to their food problem, and Jacob pointed it out. Why are you looking at one another? The solution's down in Egypt. And then they go down in Egypt, and they're not looking at Joseph. They're looking at one another for their solution. Okay, there's a hint there that something. All right, next. The drosh level is going to be an application level. Next. The Jews are still doing it ever since. They're looking at one another for their Messiah. This is the application. They're looking at one another. Back in 135 AD, the Jews had a revolution. Is that it? They tried to revolt. Okay, it's called the Bar Kokhba revolution against the Roman Empire. Bar Kokhba ruled as the prince. Bar Kokhba. And some claimed that he might be Messiah. He died at some battle. But they thought that this Bar Kokhba, that he might be the Messiah. Again, you see, the Jews are looking at one another for their solution, not the brother that they betrayed. Joseph being the brother they betrayed. They're looking for a Messiah amongst themselves, not the brother they betrayed, Jesus, Yeshua. You see? So it's still going on. Next. Next. Anyone know this guy? Schneerson. He's a rabbi. He was a rabbi. He's dead. He died in 92, 94. Do I have him here? 94. Okay. Yeah. This guy died when he was very old, in his 90s. And, when I used to talk to Reuben, and we'd talk about, he'd say, oh, this man, he might be the Messiah. I said, why? He goes, oh, a very religious man. He has a beard down to here. That was always the first thing he said when he defined a very religious man. Oh, he had a beard down to here. Okay, who cares? But, yeah. So this guy, he was so whatever, righteous, spiritual, whatever, that the Jews declared him to be the Messiah, or a group of Jews. They're called the Lubavitchers. Okay, if you go to the airport in Tel Aviv, if you go to mall in Tiberias or someplace in Israel, the Lubavitchers will have a booth set up or a storefront. And, hey, sir, come over here. It's like the Hare Krishnas, their little booth, and they want you to donate or join up. And the Lubavitchers believe that this guy is the Messiah. But he died in 1994. That was just a physical death. He's still alive spiritually, and he's still our Messiah. And now it's been 27 years since he's died, and there's still I mean, there are whole congregations all over the world of Lubavitchers. Here it says, be King Messiah. Here is King Messiah. And this is I took this picture. It's on the back of a road sign in Israel. You know, they have these posters stuck everywhere. And if you walk around Jerusalem in the ultra-Jewish sections, you'll find other posters of this synagogue has their old rabbi who has a beard down to here, and the sign will say, for your consideration, we think our guy is the Messiah. They're always looking for the Messiah, but they're always looking at one another, just like Jacob warned the brothers. Okay? Is this worth the drive from California? Okay. Next. Here's the new guy. Have you seen this guy? Yep. They kind of say he might be, or some say, no, he's just a very spiritual man. But there are some people who think that this guy, he's a new young guy, he's somehow memorized the Torah, and they think, okay. But I'm thinking, you know, the Messiah is here he's going to make the lame walk and make the deaf hear and make the blind see. I don't think the Messiah needs glasses. You know, Messiah, heal thyself. Or is that doctor, heal thyself? You know, physician. Okay, next. And now the sod level. This is the mystery or the secret level. Next. Okay. He said, look, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place. From that place. That's a mistake, isn't it? Go back to, I'm going to start this whole talk over. For the streamers, you know. No. Okay. So we may live and not die. There's that word redu, to go down to Egypt, and get this. Redu, by the way, is a resh, 200, dalit 4, vav 6. Next. Adds up to 210. Next. We know that when God made the promise to Abraham, he said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. Remember this? This is Genesis 15. This is huge, huge. Donald Trump would say huge, huge. It's huge. But it is huge, because God told Abraham, I'm going to make your descendants, you won't even be able to count them. And it said, Abraham believed God, and God credited to him as righteousness. That, our whole Christianity hinges on that verse. Because it's by faith you are saved. Okay? So just by believing, that's nice. So Genesis 15, that's where this verse comes from. And God then puts Abraham to sleep. And he says, no, certainly you're going to be 400 years in a land that is not yours. Right? Okay, next. Well, when does that 400 years start? It doesn't start when they moved to Egypt, because they weren't there for 400 years. They were there less than 400 years. So when do you start the 400-year clock? Well, I'm going to start it when Isaac was born. And you'll see why here. Because it does say, your descendants, well, that would include Isaac, correct? He will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. Well, Isaac was a stranger. He was not, it didn't become the Jews until Joshua and they came in, right? So it does apply to Isaac. He's a stranger in a strange land. Okay, so we can start counting from the birth of Isaac. Next. And 60 years old, Isaac has Jacob. How do I know that? Because the next slide tells me after his brother came out, they called him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Okay, so we know 60 years have gone past till Jacob is born. Next, from Jacob until he goes to Egypt is 130 years. How do we know that? Because the next verse says, Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. So he just comes out and says, I've been alive 130 years, right? Who said, when they asked, how old are you? I'm as old as my tongue and a little bit older than my teeth. Anyone? That was Miracle on 34th Street. Remember the old one with Natalie Wood? And they asked Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, when they were filling out his application, how old are you? And he said, I'm as old as my tongue and a little bit older than my teeth. Which is a good answer. Okay. Next. So, if they're going to be strangers in a land that's not theirs, well, that's 60 years and then 130 years. So how many years are left? 210 years left to make 400. They were enslaved in Egypt 210. Next. There's 210. Next. And what do we know about that word? He says, go down is redu. Redu is 210. So it was hidden in that sea. And when he said, go down to Egypt, you're going to be there 210 years. Yes. And that can be an interpretation on the sod level, the mystery. You have to know a little bit gematria, the values, and okay. What's next? Anything next? Oh, the end. Again. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for bringing everyone out tonight. And for all these beautiful hidden secrets you have in the letter Resh. It says that it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it is the honor of kings to seek them out. And we just love seeking out all this stuff that you have hidden in there. We ask you bring us back tomorrow when we celebrate Sukkot, and we will spend 7 days rejoicing. And may there be peace in Jerusalem. In Yeshua's name, amen.